Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams, would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up my books there. So, a couple of things of note. First off, I'm live streaming a little bit early, an hour early this week, and that is because, hang on, let me make sure that there might be a glitch here as I turn off my Wi-Fi and it switches to my landline connection, just because it should stream a little smoother there. So there might be a quick hiccup in the stream for a moment, and then hopefully it should just continue on as normal. So streaming early because I've got some friends in town and I want to make sure I have a chance to see them, have brunch with them before they leave. Secondly, I want to give a shout out to Logitech, because my old Blue Yeti mic, the connection to my the connection to the USB cable got damaged, and I thought it was going to be a big hassle to get a replacement. But it's less than 2 years old, so it's still under warranty. I just, I reached out to the customer service. They requested images of the damaged part. I sent them images of the damaged part and the receipt, and they were like, yeah, no problem. They sent me out a new one right away. So that's what I'm recording on now. And let me know if the sound is at all weird, not because I think there's anything wrong with the mic, but because I had the settings on my previous mic adjusted where I was pretty happy with them. So if the sound sounds like it's too quiet, too loud, if it's picking up weird sounds, please leave a comment, leave something in the comments just to let me know. Just because I want to make sure I fine tune this one and get the settings exactly the way I had them in the previous settings. But we're going to do something that we have not done in a little while, which is fixing some bad figure drawings, because I was been figure drawing this week. The past several weeks, but I have not been sharing any of that. So I thought it'd be nice to get back to some of that. So I have a light on over here, and let's move over to the other camera. All right. So let me get this situated here. So in terms of what I was working on in class the previous week, so usually the place where I go to a place called the Art Center Morro Bay. And we usually start with a bunch of 2-minute poses, shift into a 5-minute pose. Then we do 2 5s, a 10, and a 20. And then after that, it's all 20 minutes. So that first sheet was the 2-minute poses. This is a 5-minute pose. And I label all of them just so that I can know remember what I'm doing. Then 10-minute pose. And then all the rest of these are 20-minute poses. So, and I try to do at least one portrait every session. So, did a portrait of the model. Josh is a great model. We've drawn him a few different times, and he's always fantastic. I'm not always fantastic. So I actually wanted to start with, the whole point of this fixing bad figure drawings is to go over the works that, the drawings where the anatomy is wonky, the proportion is off. I just somehow or another, I did not hit the mark. And what I like to do is go back and just analyze the drawings, redraw it, not with the sense of trying to get a perfect drawing, but just to try and understand what it was that I did wrong in that original session so that I will be a better artist. That's the goal for all of this, is to just improve. I'm sort of futzing with the camera here, trying to get an angle that is both close enough that you guys get a good view of what I'm drawing, but also not in my way visually. And also something that, is a little bit close up, but still far enough away that you're not, just getting a tiny, tiny piece of it. I may zoom in again as I move over here and start drawing. So this one, both the anatomy and the proportion just got really wonky. And it's a pretty simple pose. I see James is in the chat. Let's see. Hey James, how you doing? He's here, and he says, "Early start, or did daylight savings throw you off?" Daylight savings didn't throw me off. I just have some friends in town, and we're supposed to grab brunch before they leave, so I figured it'd be, I wanted to stream early just so I can go out and have a little bit of a social life away from the art table. So yeah, this isn't going to be the usual time, and it's not an accident, but yeah, we are doing things a little bit different. So, and like I said, we're going to be fixing some bad figure drawing. So I guess I'm just going to dive right in. So this pose right here is particularly wonky for me. And let's see here. All right, hang on. I'm going to have to mute the notifications on my phone because I get the feeling this is going to be going off the whole time I'm trying to draw here. All right. So let's see. Get this at an angle. It's comfortable. In fact, let me see about how far over. Maybe I do want to zoom this in a little bit more. Not zoom in, but move this closer. To the drawing board. What I should really do at some point is just get a 2-camera setup so I can just go back and forth between a close-up image and a close-up image and a wide shot of the drawing board, or even have both of them up at the same time. So, I usually try to start with just blocking in proportion. Let's see here. So James in the chat says, I'm doing good. I played around with face and eye shapes. I even drew some faces without mouths. I've been thinking about the mouthless girl from the Twilight Zone movie and the Pac-Man ghosts. Yeah, I think that's, playing with facial features and human features like that, removing things, it adds a very surreal and creepy vibe to any piece of artwork. I know like Halloween just passed, but it's very much a spooky season kind of vibe to distort the features like that. I think, I think it's one of those things where whether it's the mouth or the eyes, removing either of those, drawing a head with the eye sockets kind of covered with flesh, or just blindfolded. There's something about that can be very unsettling. in both the mouth or the eyes. And I think the interesting thing with the piece that I'm redrawing is simply the fact that I can't really define why it's off. It is definitely off, but the pose is straightforward, and I didn't really have a problem capturing the pose itself, but the volumes feel very, very wonky. And actually, the proportions are also a little bit odd. The head seems a little bit small for this body. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more here. I will tell you the one odd thing about this setup is that I can't hear when there's a new comment because I'm looking away from the screen, and I should actually check and see if there's like a little notification ding each time someone makes a comment during the stream, because it's possible that it already has that feature and I just haven't activated it. But if not, they ask you at the end of every stream of the platform that I'm using to broadcast on multiple platforms. They ask if there's anything they can do to improve it. I should make a little note to myself. Comment notification sounds. Remind myself to look and see if that's a feature, or if or if it's just something that I can request from them. So let's see here. James says, I know it helps to use references, but do you think an image can stick with you to where it inspires a drawing? I'm thinking along the lines of drawing from imagination. I absolutely, yes, I 110% think that let me see. I don't know if this streams, but you know what? I think I do like this better with me just down in the corner like that. No, I actually prefer drawing from imagination. Not when I'm doing figure drawing, but when it comes to art in general, I believe that summoning the image out of your mind is the most powerful thing. And then the reference is simply to help you mold that image that's in your mind into something that is functional. And if your particular natural drawing style isn't particularly realistic, you may not need much reference at all. But what the reference does is it helps fill in the gaps in your knowledge. Like I may decide I want to do a cathedral that has like a weird Cthulhu type tentacle monster growing out of it. And I start drawing cathedrals and I'm like, I have no idea what a cathedral looks like. The reference is to fill in the places where there's blanks.
And let's say that your anatomy is really distorted and wonky, like you draw, like let's say you're just doing figure drawings, but you intentionally distort them. You may still say, well, I want to know, even if I'm going to draw them in quote unquote my style, I may still want to know where the major muscles are, or what the major muscles are called, or get a sense of them. So yes, the reference to me, the imagination is where art, illustration starts. And the reference is to fill in the gaps for that.
And that's different than somebody who's like a landscape painter, plein air painter, a portrait artist. They may really want to adhere to reality. And that's just, it's not good or bad. It's just a process, a method of making art. Hey, and I see Gary Hodges in the chat. Hey, morning, dude. How you doing? Good to see you. By the way, I know that we're trying to not collide with each other's streams. I'm still usually streaming at 11 a.m., but I have some I have some friends in town, so I figured let me get on here an hour early and do my stream, and then afterwards I can go and have brunch with them before they leave town. But and like I said before, I certainly don't. I feel like there's enough overlap in our audience. I don't feel like it's a bad thing if you and I are both streaming at the same time. If people want to go back and forth, or if there's people who, like, I certainly don't have a problem with people catching my stream on the replay. So I always feel like the only reason why I stream at the time that I stream, some people are super concerned about the algorithm and staying consistent. For me, it's simply, I picked a time that I know that I'll do it consistently. Because if I'm trying to hit whatever is the best time that the internet says to do a live stream, I probably would not do it at all. So, but my greater point is, I feel like you're probably similar to me in that you're busy, you're leading your life, you're working. You probably want to, just find a good time to stream. And I feel like you should do that. Just stream when it's convenient for you to stream. And I will catch yours on the replay if you're streaming when I'm streaming. You catch mine on the replay. Oh, hey, let's see here. It did not make a sound, but it automatically showed up. Starred a super chat for 47ness. Thank you so much, my buddy Alejandro. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's see. I honestly, I'm not sure. I think that the sounds for comments, I just need to check and see whether it's a feature I need to activate. I don't know whether they do or don't have it, but I'm making a note so I'll remember to look. and yeah, Gary also, thank you. He says, oh, if nothing else, I would rather catch you live. Well, same to you as well. I mean, honestly, a lot of the the art casters, a lot of people who I like to watch streaming, usually it isn't even necessarily the day that you guys are actually doing. It might be later in the week, and when I'm able to find time to draw, then I'll find a stream that I missed and put that on and listen to it while I'm working. That's my usual MO, is to just be in the creative process, and as long as I'm not writing, to just have, be able to listen to creative people talk about the creative process. Sometimes it's, animators, sometimes it's writers, artists, cartoonists, the whole gamut. I just enjoy, one of the people that I'm, going to go see later is a film editor. And he and I were talking a lot just about creative process and how there's so much overlap. And he was interested in hearing more about my experience in comics, the people that influence me storytelling wise. The fact that I take a lot from film language, which can be controversial. I mean, it doesn't seem controversial to me, but there are definitely people I know and respect who are comic book purists, in the sense that they really don't like the idea of comparing comics to film or animation, and really being sticklers for
the things that the comic medium can do that no one else can, which particularly the juxtaposition of time. Film and animation, time is experienced sequentially, one frame at a time, whereas in comics you can present multiple frames, multiple moments of time together, and you can play with how people interpret that to very powerful storytelling effect. And I don't discount that. But at the same time, just in the fact that comics are a visual, sequential narrative, I think I probably pull a lot more from film than, say, a comics purist. I don't like the word comics purist. It sounds like some sort of like comic supremacy thing. And I just mean people who are advocates for the medium, not as... When you compare comics to film, some people may interpret that as saying that comics are subservient or a lesser art form. And I do think that comics absolutely still, in this day and age, still need their champions, because they're not necessarily viewed as content for little kids anymore, like they were in the 50s, 60s, 80s, 90s. I mean, there's been enough, The Crow and From Hell and Ghost World. There have been enough comic adaptations that are for adults, and not necessarily because of sex or violence, but just mature, complicated storytelling. There's been enough of that, but the readership of comics still has not achieved the level of, I would say, mainstream consumption. People consume superheroes on a mainstream, level, a mass media level, let's say. That's what I mean by mainstream. Mass media. People consume superheroes, but they don't necessarily consume comics at a mass media level. So I definitely can see people being protective of that. And hey, I see Dylan in the chat. Hey, Dylan, how's it going? Hope you're having a happy Sunday. Yeah, so I'm just going through and I'm fixing some bad figure drawings. This is the drawing that I did during my figure drawing session this week. And it just feels sort of wonky to me. Very, very wonky. So I just do little sketches, kind of trying to revise and understand where it is that I went wrong. Sometimes it's a matter of fixing things like proportion or gesture. And sometimes it's a matter of having to be more inventive and simply realizing that when I was doing the initial drawing, I may not have been particularly decisive in terms of saying, is this particular body part moving forward or backward in space, or not really defining where a limb begins or ends, or just the anatomy being off. So these are all things that when I go back and analyze my work, I'm looking at and trying to just understand and improve. That's the more important thing. And I'll tell you, one of the more challenging aspects is trying not to add too much anatomy. Because as I'm going in and fixing details, if I try to get every anatomical nuance into the figure, I can often end up with a drawing that's just lumpy. So it's a matter of finding the right level of detail. Simplifying, but not necessarily cartooning. Just carving away the unnecessary. What is the bare minimum that I need to communicate the idea of that image? Let's see here. Dylan says, I'm good. My favorite
I think that's Trading Card Game. Just had a live announcement for a new format of their game. That's why I'm late.
Well, I'm also early. I'm streaming an hour earlier than usual. Next week it'll be back to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. But for now, we're going a little bit early. But what I was saying about simplifying, I actually was thinking, I had made a note to myself when I was taking online figure drawing classes with Carl Ganas. At one point, I made a note to myself to say, what can I get away with, or how little can I get away with? In the terms of, imagine you're given an assignment by an instructor, and in my mind, I said, let's pretend I'm trying to cheat the instructor, to give them as little as possible while still feeling like I finished the quote unquote assignment. And what I mean by that is just simply, as opposed to putting, how little detail can I put in and still have the drawing feel like something that he would say, okay, this passes muster. This was done well. And it's hard to do something that feels like it's done well in general because he's a great instructor. He has a wealth of knowledge. And I think if any drawing that I do, even the good ones, there's places where you can be like, well, you missed this, you missed that. I mean, part of it is when you study with somebody for years and years, they expect more from you because you've been studying the lessons for a while. And, so as you level up, the expectations level up. And there's definitely been times when, I'll turn in a drawing and it's just sort of like, yeah, what? Like, I know it's not up to snuff, and he knows that I know it's not up to snuff, and he'll just point it out and say, all right, well, you know what you got to do here. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But going to back to that idea of what is the least I can get away with? It's not minimization for the sake of minimization or simplification for the sake of simplification, but it's a matter of stripping down to the essentials, drawing just what is essential. That's a better way to phrase it, as opposed to simplifying, is saying just drawing the essential elements of a picture, because essential has its root in essence. And that's what I think we're trying to get to with most drawings. We're just trying to get to the essence of a figure, a pose, a narrative story or moment. It's excellent. Let's see here. Dylan asks, did you finish Agatha all along? And yes, we watched the final episodes on Halloween night. I was very pleased with how it ended. I don't want to give spoilers for people who haven't watched it, but it very much leads into Young Avengers, in the fact that the character that we were already revealed who this character was, but the young male witch who's traveling the road with Agatha is a character. Well, the spoilers that they are a character from Young Avengers, and you, just from what I said, you probably already know. But I also love Young Avengers. I think it was one of the best comics to come out of the early 2000s. And the fact that they've already basically set up almost everyone else on the team already in other Marvel, either movies or TV series. And I felt like the twist that they gave was not one that I was expecting, not one that I saw coming. And I thought it was pulled off very, very well. So curious what you think, Dylan. Let me know what your thoughts are. But yeah, I was pleased with it. Very happy, very well done. I think that Marvel is kind of heading into a weird space in that, much like the Ultimate line of comics, there have been so many movies now that they have their own continuity that's different from the comics. But also they have enough things where the world is sort of changing around them. Actors are getting older and aging out of parts. as opposed to regular superhero comics where they try to keep things the same forever and ever and ever, and then maybe have a really cool special event where they claim to be shaking up the status quo, and maybe at the end the main character may have a new power or a new I don't know, new secret identity or some change from their status quo for a few years until they eventually switch back to, you know, the original status quo and make big fanfare of that. You know, now they have to do the same thing, but with live action with actors, and they can't necessarily go back to the original status quo because, you know, for instance, Robert Downey Jr. has, I don't want to say he's aged out of being Iron Man. He totally could continue to be Tony Stark, but it'll be interesting to see what this version of him as Doctor Doom is. And some people are outraged about it. I'm neither outraged nor, it's not that I'm excited or not excited. It's more just sort of, let's see how they do. You know, I'm just like, I'm not against it. I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, hell, the fact that Guardians of the Galaxy is, I think, the thing that people go back to when people are talking about betting against Marvel. No one thought Guardians of the Galaxy was going to be a good idea for a Marvel movie, and it turned out to be one of their best series, one of their best trilogies. And that's kind of how I feel about. That's how I feel about all media, comic books, film, movies, video games. Is people want to flip out when there's announcements. They want to flip out with excitement. They want to flip out with outrage. And I'm just like, let's just see how it is, you know? And hopefully, I like to live from a place of optimism. I want everyone who does something creative to make something that's good and that fans and audiences enjoy. Let's see. I can move this a little bit. Problem is that if I move this super close, it's kind of a fisheye lens. It may distort the figure a bit. And I'm going to have to move this around anyway as I move around the page and try drawing different stuff.
Let's see here. I see Jim Lujan, Jim in the chat. He says, great drawing. Can you make him sitting at a bus stop like that? Oh, no, this is my figure. We did the figure drawing class at a bus stop. That's, you know, people just sit out there, butt naked, ass out, in the breeze. Let's see here. Dylan says episode 7 was the best and the ending was okay. It was a little boring for the last 2 episodes. I like Wiccan's outfit. I didn't quite like the twist. To me, it didn't make sense. Well, yeah, I mean, I can see that, except one of the things I told my wife when we were watching, when we started watching Agatha all along, first off, she didn't watch WandaVision. So I just told her that I didn't really go into the details of WandaVision because she didn't really remember too much about the Scarlet Witch from the movies. I just communicated to her that Agatha is not a hero, that she is a villain, and this is a story following somebody who is a villain. Kind of in the same way, I guess, that Marvel did with Loki. I mean, we'll see whether they put her on a redemptive arc, because I feel like obviously Loki very much did make a heroic sacrifice at the end of that series. But with Agatha all along, you know, I told her this, just so you're clear, we're not watching a good person doing superheroic things. She's a villain, and she's probably going to treat people really shitty. And so when we get to the end, we get to the twist of where the road came from, what she did and why she did it. I felt like, for me, I found it satisfying in that the road was born out of tragedy, and particularly Agatha's tragedy, her personal tragedy, but she used it for personal gain, as I would expect a villain to do. And so for me, all of that worked. And then when you find out Wiccan's role in that, in the journey that we've been on through all the series previous to it, it very much is a mirror of Wanda's journey in WandaVision. So to me, in that sense, everything about Wiccan's involvement tracked for me. So now, whether that's satisfying or not, that's an individual choice. I mean, that there are some things I think people can universally say, this was good, this was bad. But I feel like a large majority of, feel that much more content than we really give credit to is subjective in terms of quality. Is it good? Is it bad? I feel like there's lots of stuff that people would just say is bad when really it's just not aimed at them. They're not the audience, and the content doesn't really. So I feel gross about. I use that phrase content a lot, but I also know that in general, everything is considered quote unquote content now. And it can be kind of belittling the creative process a little bit, or belittling the creative act. Point being is that even if something isn't necessarily satisfying to one person, I try to remember that there's always somebody for whom something I hate is going to be their favorite thing. And I try to leave space mentally and emotionally in terms of my critical senses to simply say, instead of is it good, is it bad? When I don't enjoy something, my first reaction is not, this is of poor quality. My first reaction is, oh, I guess this isn't for me. And then I will gauge it by a larger reaction from others. And this is a place where I think, some people are very stringent about my opinion is my opinion and it's not influenced by others. If my reaction that it's not for me is compounded by multiple people saying, oh, it's not for them as well, then that's the point where I say, oh, maybe this just wasn't executed well. But if something is not for me and a large number of people really enjoy it and praise it. Oh, wait, no, what I meant to say is if other people have the same reaction, then maybe it's just bad. But if other people really, really enjoy something that I'm not connecting with, that's where I will go back and say, all right, well, no, maybe it's not for me. There may be something to learn from exploring why it connects with other people and doesn't connect with me. Oh, hey, let's see here. Dylan says Joshua was on his channel last night until midnight with Scott and Corey. It was hella fun. See, that's one I didn't realize that they were on last night. I'll have to put that on when I'm working later and just listen to that while I'm getting some work done. In fact, I have some yard work I have to do after in the afternoon after I have brunch. And that might be a good thing to just have playing on my phone. I got some headphones on getting that done. Let's see here. So Dylan said, we're getting into spoilers here. So for anyone, I'm not going to go into spoilers, but I'm just reading Dylan's comments. So, but if anyone has not watched Agatha and plans to, you might want to skip over the next it seems like we'll see how far we go into it, maybe just the next minute or two. But Dylan says, I knew Agatha was going to die since death was a major theme and character. Yes, death was an actual character in the story. Which also, that's a minor spoiler because you find that out before you get to the finale. But that was interesting. I didn't really know whether she was or wasn't going to die. Another thing, when I'm watching movies, TV shows, books, the only time I really think about, oh, I knew this or saw this coming, is when I'm bored. When I'm engaged in the story, I don't really try to assess where I think the story's going. I try to just simply, like taking a hot bath, I try to just let it wrap around me and lose myself in the experience, the moment to moment. And I'm not saying that it's bad to guess where a story's going. It's more sort of my personal taste is to just let it happen and see how I feel at the end of the experience. And there are times when in doing that, I will find myself starting to question what is happening here, what's happening next, who is this character, and I will do what most people do, which is to say, oh, I know where this is going, or I may wonder where something's going, or I may guess. But usually when I start doing that, that's kind of a bad sign for me. It means when I'm thinking about the overall structure, it means I'm getting pulled out of the structure. I try to just see what happens. Let's see here. Dylan says the old must die to allow the new to be born, which, very much Agatha was instrumental in Wiccan's full-on birth into witchcraft. And that is to say, he was already interested in magic, as we saw from a child beforehand. Well, from, as a kid, as a teenager. But going and seeking out Agatha and going on that quote-unquote journey of the road, that really did, that was Agatha really seeing an opportunity for herself, but using it to do, to go, help both him and herself. And I see Byron is in the chat. Hey, Byron, how you doing? Hey. Let's see here. He says, I knew Alice was going to die in that episode, and I cried a single tear when Lilia had her arc finale. Yeah, Lilia, I would say of all of them, when I saw her episode, that to me was probably one of the most powerful ones, because much in the same way that you get to the end of the whole series and it puts everything in that happened before in a new context, the fact that you realize that what seemed like Lilia kind of freaking out was her experiencing time in a non-sequential manner. And the fact that all of the things that she was seeing were now tying together in interrelated ways. And I would say that other people were sacrificed to defeat the challenges they faced, whereas Lilia consciously to say that she chose to sacrifice herself, that's not necessarily true. I think the other characters also, with the exception of the neighbor who wasn't a witch at all, the other witches made a choice. They chose to sacrifice themselves for the others. But I feel like Lilia's was the most greater good. Like, she was the most completely aware of what she was sacrificing. Yes, Byron, I took it in the spirit it's intended. He said, obviously, if you don't like what I like, then clearly you're wrong. Which he just for those who humor does not translate in text, he made it a point to clarify it's a joke. But I definitely I feel you on that. Let's see here. Dylan says, my friend loves the song, but I'm not a fan of it. Maybe because it's a trio singing it. Man, my wife made it her new ringtone. Both the original version that has them singing in a circle when they first open the road, and then the produced version that the mom, the one who's a musician, that her, the version that she recorded as a full-on song.
I think both are great. I mean, it was written by the I believe it's the Oscar-winning team that did the music. It was either the music for Frozen or the music for Moana. I cannot remember which, but I remember just noticing them in the credits that they were brought on specifically because of the musical aspects. And I mean, I dug it. I thought it was a beautiful song. And when you get to the point of seeing Agatha's son singing it as a child, it's like they really are pulling on your heartstrings there with the show. I feel like it really worked for me on a lot of levels. I enjoyed it as a viewer, but as somebody who looks at art critically, I feel like it functioned very, very well. Honestly, I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed WandaVision. And that's not to say that WandaVision was bad, but I didn't, again, going back to what my cop out, I didn't connect with WandaVision that strongly. And I feel like Agatha, I connected with much more strongly as a viewer. So pleased with that. Let's see here. Dylan mentions the Artcaster episode that they did the other night, or well, it's not an Artcaster episode, but Josh streaming and having the other guys there. He says it was almost 5 hours long. Let's see here. Dylan says I was pleased, even though I knew. Byron says, I wish I could do I wish I could do that, but I feel I'm a bit too media soaked. Too often, I feel I can immediately know where a story is going within the first 10 minutes. It depends on the show, because first off, a lot of times it's not necessarily knowing how a story is going to end. It's knowing how they're going to get there. Because that whole expression that we've all heard where they say it's not a matter of plotting out every single turn, but saying, like, if you're traveling from New York to California, that there's so many different roads you can take, and you can take the back roads, you can take the main highways, but everyone can take a different journey. For me, oftentimes I'm not usually surprised by the ending, but what I enjoy is just seeing the different nuggets and the different nuances of how the creators take us on that journey and get us to that destination. And to go further, it's not just getting us there, but it's, let me try to think of a way to express what's rattling around in my head. I think that sometimes, in an effort to surprise viewers, a lot of movie, TV shows will make choices that they're unsatisfying, specifically because they don't want to do what's predictable. And I will take a show that is predictable but satisfying. And what I mean by that is they're not surprising you, but the performances the characters are giving are emotional. You're connecting with it. The places the story goes and the scenes they show you they satisfy the logic of where the story should be going. So as opposed to throwing a curveball just so you don't know where you're going, or making an ending that is you didn't see coming, sometimes an ending you don't see coming sucks. And they're like, we just didn't want to do something that's predictable. And I'm saying I would rather have something that makes sense to me, even if I kind of knew what was coming. Because we do have certain expectations. That also gets into the idea of genre tropes, and the idea that by not satisfying those genre tropes, a lot of times you end up with a displeased audience because you specifically did not deliver on the expectations of what type of story you're doing. And the fact that it's a horror story and it's a story about a villain,
You know, Dylan, you mentioned Agatha, you know, getting her just desserts, and the fact that she's going to continue in the Marvel universe in the way that she is. You know, in a lot of ways that makes sense, again, because she is, or at least started out as, a villain, and we'll have to see what she becomes in the future. But yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, Byron. Just that, you know, things being predictable. But you know what? Here's the thing that popped in my mind. Now, I have not watched the Invincible cartoon, and that's only because I just haven't had time and it hasn't been a priority. But I've read most of well, I would say at least 2/3 of the comic series. It's one of those where time has gotten crazy and I haven't had a chance to finish the entire series. But my point was that the thing I loved about Invincible was not that it was surprising me as a viewer or reader. It wasn't that it was giving me things I had never seen before. It was my favorite, and probably one of my favorite superhero comics to this day, because they weren't trying to surprise me. They were just giving me what I expected, but a really, really high quality version of it. And I think that is something where I am much more forgiving of most shows, of the idea of not having to give me something I've never. I like to be surprised. I do like to see things I've never seen before. But if you give me the choice, I'm repeating myself. If you give me the choice between something I have never seen before, but doesn't line up logically, versus something that I have seen before, but is executed very, very well, I tend to find the highly executed thing I've seen before to be a much more satisfying experience. And I think about that when in terms of both what I'm watching, but when I'm making things, whether it's just me doing the story development, I think about often, yes, I do want to surprise the viewer, but not at the expense of logic. And sometimes doing something surprising, if you've already looked at all of the options for what to do with a particular character art or a story beat in a comic or whatever story you're writing, you know, sometimes I'll say, okay, I can surprise the reader here, but doing something that they are expecting might actually be the more entertaining view. And for me, the most important thing is not to surprise the viewer, but to keep them entertained, keep them engaged. So, you know, being predictable isn't always a bad thing. Like, for instance, let's say that you're going to see a play, you're going to see a production of Hamlet or Macbeth. You know the story already. You know, there's not going to be like surprising turn of events. You know, in the fifth act, you find out that it was actually the mom who killed Hamlet's father. And I think there probably have been ones where they interpret that the mom was full on complicit with the uncle. Spoilers for Shakespeare. But not just going along with it, but like was actively planning, almost like a bit of Macbeth in Shakespeare in Hamlet. But my greater point is, for the most part, the story is the story. You're going there for the performances and the nuances. And I think that is something that can be very powerful in stories that I'm consuming and in stories that I'm creating, is just that idea of having space, leaving space mentally for something that does what you are expecting, but just does it very, very well. And I would say the execution of the narrative is first, And then if I can find a way to put surprises in there, I very much will do so. Because again, I think that the audience likes to be surprised. So that is just one man's opinion. Because you also look at somebody like David Lynch, no one will ever accuse David Lynch of being predictable. Not everything he makes is accessible, but it's always novel and it's interesting. And I think that that's what a lot of people respond to with David Lynch. And I think that there's other filmmakers, comic creators, storytellers who what they excel at is delivering the novel, the unusual, the new.
Let's see what's going on here in the comments. So Dylan mentions, fun fact, the Witch's Road is an actual thing in witchcraft. Obviously not like the show's Witch's Road. Did not know that. And I think that is worth me actually looking into. Trying to, I just like listening to documentaries or reading books about unusual facts that I don't necessarily know where I'm going to put it in a book or a comic, or if I ever will use it. But things like that just sort of marinate in the back of my brain. So that is actually pretty interesting to me. So thank you for sharing that. And Dylan also says, I didn't like the opening of the Road version because it was too produced. It was one of the things that pulled me out of the show. So you mean when they were
in a circle holding hands and chanting? I don't know. I mean, I guess it also depends on your relationship to music and musicians, because someone who actually is a musician might have a completely different experience to that than what I did. I personally, not being a musician, I didn't find it that distracting or troubling. So, I mean, it might be that if you have a musical background, you may notice a lot of things that I did not. Now, I will tell you, with drawing this drawing is a lot smaller than the drawing that I'm redrawing here. So in terms of like looking at the figure's face, like the whole drawing of mine is, well, now see, this is what I get for messing with the camera. Now I'm too close. Let's pull this back a little bit. But you can see the comparison here, that this drawing is really just like about half the size of the actual one. So I wasn't able to get in here and get like the details of the face. I really got to look into having a 2-camera setup so I can have a long lens looking at the whole thing and just switch back and forth between that and sort of a detail of the area I'm working on. Let's see here. Byron says, I feel like I enjoyed the first half of WandaVision more than the last half. Now, see, this is interesting because we get into, and Dylan also says the same. For WandaVision, I actually enjoyed the end more, like the last half, because in the first half, it felt like we stayed in each sitcom version for longer than was really necessary. I don't really think that considering the fact part of it is that with sitcoms, whatever is going on in the story is usually resolved in, a 22-minute, story arc. And that these, actually, I can't even remember if WandaVision was half-hour long episodes or whether they were hour-long episodes. But I do remember feeling like for each segment, for each episode, that I got a little bit bored with like what, like it didn't feel like it was moving the story along very much. And then when it got to like the last 3 episodes, all of a sudden it started moving very, very quickly. And I'm not against a slow buildup, but it felt like the momentum went from non-existent to moving very, very fast. And I really would have preferred something that had a little bit more movement of the narrative in terms of why Wanda was trapped in these different types of reality. Like moving that story itself forward a little bit faster early on, and then not as quickly at the end. So I don't know. Difference of opinion, difference of experience. Let's see here. Let's see here. By the way, we're gonna have to wrap up in a few minutes, only because, you know, like I said, I'm gonna be heading out to catch. So in fact, yeah, I'm gonna be catching some people for brunch. Let me switch back over to the main camera, and we're gonna go into talk show mode, so I can put this down and focus on the comments here for these last few minutes as we wrap up. Turn this light off. There we go. So let's see here. So Byron says, I absolutely can agree with all that, Jeremy. In honesty, I've found that stories do have a pattern that makes them work, the same way that an engine that is built right works. And failure on that can just leave you spinning your wheels. Nice metaphor. Well done. My biggest complaint about Invincible is that if he's supposed to be so invincible, then why can I see him? Nice. Let's see here. Dylan says probably the hero's journey, Byron. So Byron says the hero's journey is definitely one of such patterns, but it's not the pattern either. You know, and that's an interesting thing. I haven't sat down and read the hero's journey from cover to cover. I've read bits and pieces of it, but also, you know, the Hero of a Thousand Faces, I think, is a lot more of an interesting exploration of a variety of heroes' journeys. And then there's there's another book that I haven't had a chance to read yet, but it's called The Heroine's Journey. And it's definitely looking at how the nature of conflict and story in female-centered narratives or female-presenting characters and their arcs, because women tend, whether action films or not, the violence tends to be the go-to for men's ways to solve conflict. And that even if it's an action story, women have a different relationship to conflict than men do, and their approach to handling things, and just their approach to community and interpersonal relationships. And I thought that's something that I really wanted to read, not just in terms of like writing better female characters, but also looking at bringing more of that into other center, not just necessarily female, but whether male or non-binary characters, but bringing those types of ideas into other characters where violence isn't necessarily the go-to solution, or maybe it's something where when violence fails and other ways of interacting with obstacles and roadblocks have to be approached, have to be learned, you know. So let's see here. And Dylan agrees when Byron said that hero's journey is one such pattern, but not the pattern. And Byron says, I say the pattern as though there is one true pattern. So that's, yeah, basically what I said about Hero with the Thousand Faces. And he says, but I ramble. Obviously, with my rambling ass, you know, I mean, that's what we came here for. We're here for the rambling. Let's see here. Spoilers for something most of us read in high school. Yeah, you know what? It's funny. The Hero's Journey, I definitely did not read that in high school. I don't think I even read it in college. I think that's one of those books where no, The Writer's Journey was a book that I was assigned after I'd finished college. When I was taking a course at an animation program, and it was one that was recommended for storyboard artists, specifically just to understand story better. But I think I had to come to Hero with a Thousand Faces and The Hero's Journey on my own, going out and getting those. So Dylan says, in modern Western witchcraft, you can call on energies, spirits, etc., to come to you, but on the witch's road, you go to them. And then also on the music, she says, it sounded like professional singers, not just everyday women. But Alice, I would expect a good singing voice. Well, I think that what you say is true, but that transition didn't throw me because it felt like when they did the chant, the first verse felt like it sounded like, pardon me, it felt like it sounded like the actual actresses singing in their normal voice. And then when they went into the second verse, like you say, it sounded more produced. I took that transition from the normal voices to the produced voices as the beginning of magic. It's the beginning of the magical version. They've now like you said, they've summoned these energies, and now it's transitioned from the normal world crossing a threshold before the door even opens. They have now crossed a threshold into the magical world. And knowing Wiccan's purpose in the road, think about the fact that, all right, we're deep into the conversation, so full on spoilers. Everything that they experienced on the road, from them opening the door onward, that's all Wiccan. So you could look at that version of the song as also being how Wiccan experienced or imagines it. So, I mean, to me, it didn't. I understand what you're saying in terms of it disrupting you. My mind didn't even question it. It just went with it in the narrative. But in looking at it and thinking about it, the things that you had that threw you, I can see a logical reason for them existing. So it didn't throw me in the moment, and it doesn't throw me in analysis. That's not to dismiss your reaction to it, but I'm more saying why I didn't have that reaction. So let's see. So Gary says, I preferred the end of WandaVision 2. I got tired of the retro conceits, maybe because I'm old enough to remember all those shows and thought it was amusing for a few minutes, then over it. See that right there. Yes, Gary, that was exactly, and Dylan says, I can see that. That right there is the thing. I felt like the conceit of the sitcoms and being in a sitcom world, the fact that they stayed with one sitcom all the way through for an entire episode, then moved to a new sitcom. It's not necessarily that they needed to do multiple sitcoms in each episode, but it felt like for the time that they stayed with a particular sitcom, they didn't tie up much story for each of those until you really got until the halfway point of the series, and all of a sudden it shifted into overdrive, where we're like, okay, now we're getting into plot and plot and plot. And I felt like starting to pick apart, like I think you could have stayed completely in the reality for the very first episode without breaking the the first episode of WandaVision to me could have just been, she's in this world, it's not the world that she remembers, but she also doesn't even remember the world, she's caught in this thing. But I think that immediately going into the next episode to start picking apart that, because it kind of stayed with the Honeymooners I Love Lucy thing and then slowly started transitioning into the next ones. I think that if they started picking apart her reality from episode 2 on, and then there, it's like you're getting more and more to the breakdown, that would have worked better for me as a viewer experience. And interestingly, James mentions, I was wondering what I would use white Conte sticks for, highlights maybe. This is something that I thought I would have time to get to in this live stream. I did not, but I'm going to turn the lights back on and I'm going to go back over to my drawing board, because I think maybe next week
I'm going to do something I didn't have a chance to do, which is, let me go back over to the other camera. So I've been working on gray toned paper more lately. And this drawing to me is probably one of the most successful drawings I've ever done on gray toned paper. And the reason why, I've got a big note here underneath that the gesture drawing was done in white underneath. And what I used to do was do what I would normally do, where I would do a gesture drawing in black and then draw in highlights. And I found, because you can draw over white with black, you cannot draw over black with white. Once you put the black down, it's going to turn to a gray, messy smudge. But this process of doing a white underdrawing is something that I was going to do just one rough drawing that I did, correcting this drawing, and then I was going to try and work on some gray tone paper and show this process. Next week, next stream, I'm going to do some tone paper drawings, and I'm going to show you that white gesture process and how I'm doing it. So make sure to tune in next week for that. How's that for a teaser? All right. Okay, so I'm gonna have to wrap up with because I realized like people for brunch are gonna be coming soon. So let me see here. So Dylan says I can see that point about the transition into magic. Yeah, so that's what I was saying. It's really just a matter of how we experience and interpret things in a particular narrative. And and James says, okay, sounds good. And also Byron says, sounds baller. I'm glad to hear it, man. Thanks. I'm trying to bring my A game. I mean, a lot of this, like I said, it's all about me showing a lot of the rolling up the sleeves and the grunt work to try and improve and becoming a better artist. It's not always sexy. Sometimes it's a lot of hard work. But when I get something that actually feels like a breakthrough to me, it's pretty gratifying, because I've been drawing long enough that it doesn't feel like breakthroughs happen very often anymore. It feels a lot more like, for every inch I move, it takes 10 times more effort to just get a little bit better and a little bit better now. Whereas when you're starting off early in your journey as an artist, you can very clearly see when you're getting a grasp of anatomy, proportion, gesture, expression, composition. You can see yourself getting better at these things. And after you do it for a number of years, it's just sort of like, you're even looking at a piece, you're like, I don't know. Is it better? I can't even tell anymore. And sometimes you get to places where things get worse, and you're literally, that's the worst part, is when you think you've gotten to a certain level and you can see yourself devolving. And I've learned to not freak out about that anymore, because often when I feel my artwork regressing, what it is my brain is mentally deconstructing how I approach things, so that I can rebuild my approach cognitively into something that's bigger and stronger. And the second thing is also that our tastes continue to refine, our tastes continue to grow. And there's a whole thing about how the Ira Glass thing of how your taste outstrips your skills. That never ends. So as you get better, your taste also improves. So things that looked good to you at one point in your life, a year later, may look horrible. And there's a reason for that. It's because you can now perceive flaws that you did not perceive before. So sometimes it's a matter of my brain deconstructing things to try and to approach it from a stronger approach. Sometimes it's just, what I thought I was becoming a worse artist, and it really is just, I can see flaws I didn't see before. So let's see here. All right, last couple of comments. Last comment. You have the honor of taking us out, Dylan. Have you ever used blue toned paper? And yes, I have used blue toned paper. I don't think I have any on the drawing board here, but I have used it in the past. I try to get too caught up in whether it's the blue toned, the regular gray, or the tan toned. It's just a matter of preference, or changing it up simply to see how, like, sometimes adding a little element in, just having a different colored ground to work on, you discover happy accidents, or it throws you off your game in a positive way, in that way of adding unpredictability. Kind of like how with watercolor, the fact that it just flows in places and you don't necessarily have 100% control over it. Same thing. It's just adding an element of variability to the process. So Dylan says, "Yay!" and have a good day, have a good rest of your day. And to the chat and Byron also, have a good day as well. All of you guys, thank you so much. Let's see here. Oh, the usual closing out. By the way, tomorrow it's going to be first Monday of November. So you know what we're going to do. Art Book Study Group, where we do deep dives in some of the best art books around, try to suck out all the knowledge we can. We will be doing that on Patreon. For as little as $2 a month, you get access to that Patreon exclusive live stream, as well as a whole archive, hundreds of hours of Patreon exclusive live streams, specifically where we're doing deep dives into some of the best art books around, trying to suck out all the knowledge we can. There's higher tiers for higher rewards, but $2 a month gets you in. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord server, where we share works in progress, encouragement, tips, tricks, ongoing conversation. It's what's going on in the chat. It's just going on throughout the week. So we have that going on over on the Discord server. You also get access to an online archive of my comics. You can read those digitally. So head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. That's GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated gifts delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, you can head on over to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. You can also pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. It's a 2-volume series. It's retelling Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both have extensive back matter, character designs, thumbnails, script excerpts, page layouts, and more. I basically show you how I put the entire book together. And if you go to the homepage of my YouTube channel, scroll down to book flip-throughs, you can see videos of the books, the inside, see what's on there before you pick them up. All right, guys, again, thank you so much for hanging out. I appreciate you. Tons of fun in the chat again. I appreciate the comments. Gary, when you stream, I'll have to catch your stream on the replay later, but have a great stream, and I look forward to seeing it. Everybody else, thanks so much. That's it for now. Go be creative.